Dustin and I are excited to share our conversation with Jillie Johnston, an incredible coach. We had the opportunity to dialogue about the power of authenticity, vulnerability, and showing up in that way in relationship, the incredible ripple effect it has when we choose to overcome our fear or anxiety or questions around how is someone else going to perceive me, accept me, and boldly and courageously step out into the world. It's the impact that can have on our life internally, but also just the relationships and community we surround ourselves with. There's so much that we get into here. I can't wait to lead you into that and encourage you to check out Jillie Johnston and the amazing work she does as a coach, as a podcaster, as a public speaker, and just to name a few of the many ways that she's currently impacting the world. Thank you so much. We'll jump right into it.
I'm curious to know, for you, what that means to you, what your passion is with that, anything that comes up that you want to share on the topic of being seen and seeing others, almost like the avatar, I see you, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Love that movie. One of my favorites.
So good.
I use
so
that.
Good.
I use that sentence of like, I see you, right? Because it is there's so much depth to that. I hid so much of myself in my life because I was afraid of what people were going to think of that part of me, right? Of the anxious part of me, of the so afraid part of me. The one that like was human, really. Like I tried to hide my humanness in perfection because I was so afraid. I had this story in my head from when I was little that if I wasn't perfect, then I wasn't worthy of love. And I wasn't worthy of the success. I wasn't worthy of, whatever, but ultimately it was love and belonging. And so what I've noticed, and I don't think I'm unique in this, is if we don't heal something, right, we just carry that pattern, right? And so we think we're going to like beat it off the line. And it's like, oh, no, don't worry. I'm going to catch you at the next stoplight. So you can't run too far. And so when I finished athletics and was so, well, I don't know if I want to say finished, but when I was no longer this like competitive athlete, and yet my worth was so tied into my achievements and my accomplishment and my performance, right? I like thought, okay, like that part is getting left behind, and then I'm going to go into entrepreneurship, right? And I thought that I was going to like leave that behind, and like I was never going to have to deal with that perfectionism again, right? And then I show up in entrepreneurship and all of the same tendencies, all the same fears, all the same. In order to be loved and in order to have success, I have to be perfect. And in order to be good enough, I have to be perfect. And it burnt me out, and it physically hurt my health to try to keep up to the standard that isn't real. And I had a friend that I forget which friend said to me once, like, Jillie, like her goal was like, I don't want to be admired anymore. I want to be loved. And that hit me so hard. I was like, wow, because being admired is being on a pedestal. Being admired is thinking that you have to like check these boxes and show up in this way and be this kind of person. I just want to be loved. And to me, being loved is being seen. And let me mess up, and let me say the wrong thing, and let me write the wrong thing, and let me fail, and let me do it publicly, and I want to be loved anyway. And so that is my version of like, I want to be seen, but I want to see other people that way. Give me all of it. Give me all of you. And there's nothing that's too much or too little. And that's what that means.
That's powerful, Jillie.
That is. Joe, we're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just very impacted by that. I think that's an incredibly, clear understanding of like seeing your own journey, seeing yourself in that, and the change that happened in you from that shift, and realizing that and shifting. And that comment your friend made about not desiring to be admired, desiring to be loved, that is so impactful. I've never heard that before. And I think that
Right.
that very succinctly speaks to, I think, an immense amount of the internal confusion and so much of humanity. And just kind of that misalignment, that misjudgment of like, this is why I'm here, to be, the accolades or to perform or whatever. And it's so missing the mark of what actual connection is, or love, or like lights us up and empowers us. And I was really impacted by that. And I'm interested in some of this. Kind of goes back to our gratitudes and intentions from before, the participation of your community in that shifting, and participation of like you reaching out to others and allowing yourself to, first start seeing others, but then to be seen. I feel like that shift is huge too. I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, it's a work in progress, if I may say so.
Yeah.
But it got to the point where, okay, so I can like remember this is something like like a concrete example, and I think sometimes concrete examples are really helpful. So I had like this dream of holding retreats, right? So I like held my first retreat, and I thought I was going to die because I had a trauma response from like the fear of like, is anyone going to show up? And what if no one shows up? And then I had like one person coming, and like, but I can't ever retreat with one person, right? And all of the stuff that, as you all both know, I'm sure, that goes in your head when you're like launching something, creating something. And it ended up, I ended up like selling it out and went great, whatever. And I was on a high, and I was doing another one. And within a week, like I had it fully booked. And then a week later, all of the people backed out. I was out thousands upon thousands of dollars. One was like circumstantial. One was not a good fit. And I ended up refunding her money because it was not a good fit. And so it was like 6 people to 0 people within a week. It was just weird.
Wow.
It was just weird.
Yeah.
And I have really struggled with like, what do people think? What are people going to think? Throughout my lifetime, right? So much of my decisions in my past, no longer, but in my past, were based on that. And so it was like this visceral feeling, because I was like, I have to share this public failure. Like after things have been going so like this feels so, I have to share this part of myself, and I've yet to really share that part of me. I'm always vulnerable and authentic, but this was at a whole other level. And at that time, I was also going through some serious mental health issues. And I was put on, some medication for my anxiety, which ended up, it was not a good fit for me. And it exacerbated everything. So as someone who's pretty even keeled, I have a lot of tools. I'm in therapy. I've been in the personal development world for a very long time. I was in a very scary mental place. So this all happened at once. And we were in Redwoods National Park because we have lived in a van and we were traveling, and I couldn't handle it. And was at the point where I was like, I either have to put down this like perfection facade and like really let myself be seen, or like I have to stop, because this is hurting my mental health, this is hurting my physical health, this is hurting my relationship, my marriage, this is like hurting everything. And so I was running, and I heard this voice that was like, just do it scared. Like, invite people on the journey with you, but like show them everything. And so I was like, whoa. And so the next day I was like, I'm doing it. So I like sent a public announcement, like, I failed my retreat. Everyone backed out. I'm out thousands of dollars. I failed at this launch, and I failed at this thing, and I did this thing, and this is how I'm handling it. And it was, and I had like more people sign up for that than I ever had for anything. And I had people reaching out to me, thank you for sharing, because I'm not alone, or oh my gosh, maybe something hasn't gone wrong for me. And the outpouring of normalization. Other people. I was like, this is, and that's where it I don't want to say it started because it did start before that, but that was the biggest like concrete of like, it's so painful. I can't keep living.
That lands so much. I like what you say. So what's interesting about what you're sharing, that means I have so much empathy. That's so close to my heart and soul. That's a big part of how this podcast actually got started. Sure. We've been recording for like, I don't know, 9 months, never used any of it. It was just all hidden. And as a coach and all these things, and it's like the layer of the onion. I've been growing through this in my journey of these layers of being able to normalize being a human being, being me and my silliness, my loudness, my real quiet, like old man depth. And everything in between. That just because you're a coach, I'm a coach, she's a therapist, she's a psychologist, doesn't mean we're not human. And you made a really good point. And I had this happen to me this year too, it's like a lot of motivational speakers, a lot of people talk about like on the other side of fear, or the cave you fear to enter holds the jewels you seek. I think that was either Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor said that a lot. Same thing. On the other side of fear is courage. On the other side of, outside your comfort zone is where all the magic happens. There's so many ways we can view it. And it's still terrifying when you're in it. No matter how much work you've done, it's still terrifying. Because even if you've been doing this muscle for maybe say 5 or 10, 15 years, you're then going to a whole other level for you. And that's just as terrifying, most likely. It's probably in a similar range of someone who's new to the terror of this because they're not doing it at all. That hasn't been a muscle that they've built. And I think it's like to each his own on their journey. It's still fucking terrifying. And it's human. And he said normalization, it's normal. And then the beautiful mind fuck of it all is that when I opened up about some of my grief and heartbreak of my breakup, and this is what got us into our podcast, the first 2 episodes are on, grief and heartbreak. I had such a plethora of people I know around the world. It's like 10 different countries, people from high school, people from junior high, people from college. It was crazy. I had like 40 to 50 people reach out to me, and like the support, then them sharing stuff with me, even clients were responding to me. And that blew my mind because I was terrified to let them know that I'm not this good. I mean, like I was still doing that in ways, in full humility. Like I've grown a lot through that in the last 6 to 9 months of that. And so when you share what you just shared for you, like I have a lot of empathy, and I think I guess my point is it's a weird, tricky, hidden, obvious thing once you do it that people are like, I don't want you up there. Like the ego thinks it needs to be enough, to be this, to be that. But then the other humans, whether it's a retreat, a client, a friend, like professional or personal, it's the opposite, where they're like, yes, you're human. Oh my gosh, I can relate. Now I want to connect. Now I really want you to teach me more stuff because I know I'm not alone. You said it so brilliantly. So I just want to mirror that back to you, that if anyone's listening to this, like that is so true. Kudos to you for the courage to do that, because that's hard what you did. I haven't done it on a retreat level, but that is so beautiful. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. I think it's such a useful learning
and
to share.
So like you said, it's always terrifying, right? Because there's like this primal fear of like being shunned and ostracized. And so that was like a year and a half ago, probably. And to touch on grief, because I think the other thing is people want to know that their humanness is okay, and like these shadow sides of themselves are okay, and that there's nothing wrong or shameful or bad about them. And I think that we crave that permission and the courage that it takes. I like to say, like, I like to heal publicly so that other people can heal privately and not feel alone in their private healing. And So this past year, I've been really open about it, and I love to talk about grief. I love to talk about grief because it is one of the only human universal emotions and experiences that we ever have, that we all are connected by and can all understand on like a deep, deep, deep level. So this year I lost my cat, who was my baby. She was my soulmate. She was my spirit animal. And I lost it during a time where I was leading a program for entrepreneurs. And, people paid me a lot of money, and I had this commitment and whatever else. And it was also a container that was so reciprocal, right? It gave to me, and it was supportive, and it was loving. And so I showed up in my grief, right? I showed up the day that I wasn't sure if she was going to make it or not, because I needed the support. And I showed up and I was like coaching, but also like teary eyed and saying, this is where I'm at today, and this is how I want to show up. And then I wrote about my grief within this private space of this is where I'm at, and this is what I'm learning, and this is how I'm caring for myself, and did videos and everything else. And after that program was over, I had multiple people reach out and say, I got so much out of this program, but the biggest thing I got out of this program is how you showed up in all of you, how you didn't shy away or pretend any second of it, and how powerful you still were. And like, now I'm seeing that can also be true for me.
Oh yeah.
And I love it. And I love to talk about it because what a gift. Like if it's just like, okay, I have to show up and be courageous, but other people to take that and ripple effect it out and feel okay and not alone, like sign me up every single time.
Yeah. That I'm so excited. I want to look. I don't know if you want to say things, Joe. I'm just this is.
I will.
I know.
Go ahead.
I know. I'm always like, I want to jump right in. That lands so deeply again. Like again, for anyone listening, like I personally, and like on both sides of that coin, I think that's so beautiful, and it goes back to that. Like, okay, no, it's like. All the motivational speakers, so many I've seen, so many coaches I've met, whether it's a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, there is this wall, this facade that I think is very common. I think in recent years as a species, we've been, I think, shifting out of this, especially with the internet and social media, where people want more authenticity. They want more depth. They want to see the real side of someone. And so the personal and the professional have been blending. And I think I love your courage, your passion, and your willingness to do that, because I think it is what us as a species are craving, is to that seen and be seen. And if someone's up there all perfect, then I'm so intuitive. I think we're all very intuitive. I'm very sensitive. And if for a moment I'm watching someone and I start thinking, nah, they're not this way in their personal life, I lose interest. I lose connection. And even where Joe and I met, the man that runs the organization that we're certified through, is, to your point, it was in Master Prac. Joe, I don't know if you remember this, and he said, I wouldn't be honest, like it's the anniversary of my dad's death, and I cried last night, and like of all the stuff he taught us, I'm actually getting goosebumps. I remember that, and I was like, this guy seems so on all the time. He's got it all figured out. And it's like, no, he doesn't. Thank you. Now I feel more connected. Now I appreciate you more. Now I want to learn from you, more. And I think that's so huge. And so a lot of empathy. I love that. I love that you're doing it. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think we need more of it. And I think too, I want to add this last piece. I've seen there's like a spectrum of this, and Joe and I talk about this a lot, like the pendulum of human change, where it's like, oh, it's here, I'm growing, and oh, this is amazing. And it's like, wait a minute, that was a little too much, and I kind of some collateral damage usually happens unintentionally. It's like, okay, cool, now I'm here, I'm more integrated. I've seen trends of videos online when people are just crying and they're just getting like, I think there's an extreme of this where it's like, nah, that's not what I'm looking for. I think it's like you're doing your work at whatever level you are as the teacher or the student or the colleague or whatever it is. It's like we don't need to go to those crazy extremes, I don't think. But it's not this one either. It's that, I think, even more scary at times, because that's the gray area. It's an art. It's a flowing thing. It's you're learning. Like, there's some risk here. I don't know. I'm right in the gray area. And so I think that's what it sounds like you did. And that's probably why people were just like, holy shit, this one was the real deal. Thank you. And I'm so inspired. I need to now go tell you because you touched my heart and soul so much. That's gold right there. Amen. I love it.
It's really beautiful. And thank you both so much for sharing. I'm so, I think, inspired and connected by that because it aligns with, because it's human, because it's real. And that inherently aligns with my experience. And I think everyone's experience. And just, I think I'm still surprised by my own fear of being authentic, that it still comes up. I mean, I think it's easy to self-judge in here too, that you're like, oh, I've learned this much. I've been doing this work for a long time. Like, why is this still happening? And I love the normalization of like, it's going to continue to happen. Like, this is part of evolving. This is part of moving forward. Like, there are things that are going to be terrifying. Yeah. And it wouldn't be growth if there wasn't. Like, it is an integral part. It's the other side of that dichotomy. Like, you can't have the one without the other, which is so, I mean, I love that, the whole kind of program and movement you started, Jillie, about doing it scared. I think that very clearly and simply like states that just the reality of the, like, this is life. This is not like, it's not a once thing. This is a continual thing. But there is a really beautiful side, and you've both expressed this as well, of we can learn that about ourselves. We can learn that about life. And then we can choose with that information to continue stepping into it, knowing that we're going to be okay anyway, knowing that this is what the person next to me is going through. This is what those who love me are also experiencing. And how can I be, an example to others to continue to show up in that way? But that flip side of that piece is we talked about, being seen also, and seeing it like, how can I learn from those around me who are stepping into this fear, who are stepping into this intimidation, this unknown, and doing it with courage, and doing it with grace, and doing it with an openness, allowing themselves to be seen, not making it look, like, I think the hero's journey is a really interesting title for kind of that growth journey, because I think most of us have such a skewed idea of like what that hero is, and then that there's, a hero doesn't experience these fears and stuff, and it's exactly the opposite. Like, that's the person who does experience and moves anyway and chooses to show up anyway. That's the hero. And it's every one of us in different ways, and we're on a different spectrum in that. And I think that that's an incredibly useful thing to continue to remember in life. And sometimes I'm surprised by the amount of repetition I need before I learn that, and then I will still need, and like the things I'm gonna have to learn again. Yes, I've already learned them, but I don't know them as deeply as I'll need to move into the next stage of my life. And there'll be a struggle with that. There'll be fear with that. There'll be learning with that, tears with that. And there'll also be joy and celebration and abundance and change. And just how integral those are intertwined. And I'm just so grateful, because I would agree with Dustan too, in that I feel like I've seen, and I'm interested in your perception of this, Jillie, too, just like there seems to be more of a desire and a hunger for that, and for that normalizing, for the actually showing our whole selves. And I'm really excited for that and to be a part of that.
So powerful, Joe, and so eloquently and put. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Is like, you can't have one without the other. It's an and. It's always an and. And that's the gray area, Dustan, you were talking about. And then Joe, when you're saying like, it gets to be like hard, and you get to be learning and tearful and celebratory and joyful and meaningful, and in living in that space and allowing yourself to be in that space. And I think that craving, and Dustin, right before you said crave, I like in my head was like crave, right? Like people are craving, and I'm craving. And so that's like the first word is like the longing and the crave. And I think that people have felt, I think social media does two things, right? It harms because it creates this highlight reel and this idea of perfection and misinformation, disinformation, and the different industries have capitalized on making everyone not feel good enough, right? But then there's also this other beautiful side of social media, and which is why I can't kick it. I can't let it go yet because I see the beauty. And it's this possibility. It's the examples. It's the normalization. It's the fastest way to connect with people and feel less alone, to get the message that you need at that time that you need it without even realizing it. And so I think that that's why those aspects and those people are taking off, whether it's like on social media or in life, because there is this want to feel good enough and to know that you are good enough and to know that all those parts of yourself, the inner child and all of the complexity and your shame and all of that and the shadow and all of that and the light and all of that is good enough. And that's why I got into worthiness work, because I think that everyone just wants to know that, and that's what everyone is seeking.
Craving. Yeah.
Totally agree. I think it's Joe and I have actually talked about this before. I think to what you're saying, I think whatever part of the inevitably flawed part of our upbringing as every human being's parents are so beautifully, perfectly imperfect. And then there's a wide range there, as we all know. I think that's part of this, like, one of the main limiting core beliefs is I'm just not good enough. I love that you're doing that. And I wanted to ask you, actually, so like this part of your journey, this stepping into courage, this allowing yourself to be seen, inspiring others, I'd love to know one or some of the most empowering, exciting, life-changing, or nourishing, or just the most impactful way living this way has changed your life. Something along those lines. If anything comes up with that question, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that for you.
To just make sure that I'm understanding of just like embodying the worthiness work and feeling good enough, and what, like, some concrete examples of like how that has impacted my life in a big way.
Yeah, or I guess like maybe even more simple is, what do you love most about living this way and living this way and having the courage to really be seen, whether it's professionally or personally? What do you love most about this, or how has this changed your life the most positively? Maybe it's an easier way to answer the question.
I feel fully alive. I don't feel like I'm asleep or in default or on autopilot. My relationships are meaningful. My friendships are meaningful. My marriage is meaningful. I take care of my body in a meaningful, alive way that isn't like, oh, I have to get up and go to the gym. It's like, no, what do I need today? What do I want today? What is going to nourish my body today? What do I want to share today? What do I want to talk about? What is true for me? What is alive for me? And that might be really freaking scary to talk about. It might be in the middle of my pivot. It might be me shutting down something that, I have built. It might be me doing something I've never done before. It might be having a really hard conversation with somebody. But in all of that, it's like, I feel alive, and there's depth and there's meaning, and it has brought so much more depth, meaning, and connection in every way, and joy. And so it's hard to maybe nail down one thing, because it has
totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I went from like not knowing who I was, not being able to make a single decision in my life without taking like 10 other people's opinions, and then like being in a paralysis because like I didn't know who I was. To I make my own decisions. And of course, you know, I input when it's important or, you know, when I need it. But ultimately, I like to say this is like the depth of like connection and meaning and fulfillment in our life is directly related to the courage that we're willing to show up for.
I love that. I would agree. Yeah. I love that. I think it's like that. The magic is outside of our comfort zone, and it's a very distorted, sneaky little thing. It's like, no, your comfort, you know, the way you're going to drive to work, you know, who you're going to hang out with today, you know, the norm of your relationship. This is what you do Thursday and all these little things. But there's so much growth. There's so much beauty. There's so much magic outside of that. And I think it is intrinsically linked to what we're talking about. Yeah, Joe and I have talked a lot about that. It's a beautiful thing. I love what you said about the social media piece too, because it's like how do we share this? How do we embody this in our most wholesome way? To like, I like the quote, "Change one, change 1,000." And I think to what you were saying, Joe, earlier is like that, and inspiring others and being inspired. Like in a moment where I'm like, okay, I'm getting kind of comfortable with this. And then someone I know and care about and trust and respect's like, boom. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they just like totally did something awesome. And that was probably really, and yes, I know that was really scary for them. And I get that inspiration. It's like, cool reminder. Ooh, what else resonates? Not that I should, but what resonates that I can, if I want to. And then I think it's that beautiful, like we just start as an organism in this civilization. We start by osmosis, influencing, like, you know, the 5 people, right, that we spend the most time with. That famous quote, we're influenced and influencing, and that's a beautiful synergistic build. And then it goes into community. And it's like, you know, with your work, Jillie, I just love it. I think it is, for me, one of my biggest passions in life. It's whether it's an interview I'm listening to, or it's a moment I get to connect with. Joe and I talk about this, whether it's a stranger that like they're ringing out, you know, my groceries, and I just stop and I breathe and I put my phone down in my pocket and I say, how was your day? And they share something and I listen, or I share something that's really that's real. Like, I don't need to get crazy deep, but I think there's a beautiful range, whether it's a stranger or our partner or our closest friends, or in a professional realm, especially as a coach. There's so many ways to bring this way of living. I can't say it enough. I love that you're doing that. And I appreciate your answer to that question. That resonates as well.
I'm really impacted by, you said something really, really beautiful earlier, Jillie, about this idea of living in a way as if, you know, we were at a campfire that's just, it's attracting, like living in a way that is so genuine and real and alive, not without its complexity or fear or scare. Like, that's just part of it. But that it inspires and attracts others to join into that community, to participate, because they desire to see themselves in that way too. They desire to show up in that way, and have that aliveness, to have that life, to have that the lack of regret, to have that sense of being present in their own lives. And I'm so impacted, I think, by the reality that living that way simply does attract. Like, people see us whether we want them to or not. Like, we are impacting that. And this is true of absolutely whoever. I'm not trying to point out like us as coaches or us on a podcast or any platform. Like, every human, like, we are so conscious of each other's energy, whether we're aware of that or comfortable with the idea of that or not. We simply are. And by living in that way, like, you absolutely change your community, you change your environment, you shift every arena and area that you're in life. And I think, like, I can very clearly see the ripple effects from both of your lives and in your communities. And it's so empowering to me, inspiring. And I think, like, my desire in sharing this is to share that with everyone. I think that's true of us all. We can all be that light in our community. We can all be that pebble that starts that ripple, wherever it is, however small that little stone is that you may feel like it still has a ripple effect. Like you are still causing change and being a beacon when you show up in that authenticity, when you show up scared and do it anyway, and choose accepting yourself, choosing your own worth. I mean, I think that was it was a massive part of my worthiness journey. And one of the most impactful initially ways that she did that was by knowing and claiming her own worth and showing up at that. I just hadn't seen that in life very often. I knew it was plausible for me, but I hadn't had the model. I hadn't seen that acted out in a way that I could emulate, in a way that I could connect with enough to have that hope, to have that belief that it was possible for me. And that was something that you allowed me to see, that you offered, and it was life changing and still is. Like I'm so impacted by that shift in my life, and I just I'm so passionate about that being not only plausible for everyone, but that is part of our journey. You may not be there right now, but you're on your way. And then you can also be that for someone else. And I just think I'm just so grateful for this topic and grateful for y'all allowing yourselves to be seen in that way. And I know that as I said already, like I personally have been impacted by both of you in that. And just grateful for that light, and just excited for the humans we continue to be and inspire just in life, and excited to meet the others that are also doing this, and because there's such an attracting quality to this, and I continue to be humbled and impressed and surprised by the humans around me, and inspired.
Trans me out again. Wow, that was very well said, man. It was beautiful. I started smiling because I was like, I know what he's going to say right now. And I'm so glad he shared that. And, intuitively, I was like, he's going to share it. He's going to share it. And that inspired me a lot. I know I'm not going to share what's your experience, but it's cool to, get to meet you, Jillie. And I just, he has shared with me the you-ness of you being you and just the positive impact. And I know Joe's had that on me. We've had that on each other. You're having that on me right now, just in the short time I've gotten to know you. So thank you. It's very nice to meet people that resonate in this frequency. I think it is a frequency. I think it's beautiful. And it's like that choice, right? You made the choice. Like, you know what? I could do the old thing. I'm going to still show up. And there's something about that frequency that is felt. It's like it automatically, I feel like it unlocks people's hearts. And they're like, I don't even know what you're doing. I kind of do, but I love it. Please keep doing it. Yes. And you're like, and then you feel seen and you grow, right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, it was difficult. Thank you for that mirror. Like, right? Like, it's beautiful. So curious if there's anything else you want to share on that, or anything else that's coming up for you right now.
Well, one, the amount of love and support and encouragement on this podcast is out of this world. So it's just like, no, I love you more. No, I love you more. And so it's just like, it's making me smile. And
it's so good.
I'm guessing you're like this with everyone. But I so appreciate it. I feel so seen and just like lifted. And I love you both and adore you both, and so grateful. And this idea of what I think is like magnetic, and we've all talked like, we want to create a magnetic feeling where people just like want to come, they want to pull up a chair, they want to be part of the conversation and say like, give me more. And I know that this more you sink into your enoughness, the more I sink into my enoughness, the more that I'm like, oh, I just totally said that wrong, or oh, that was weird, or like it brings people closer because they feel safe, right? It's like a warm container. And I always want to provide that, and also like want to have that in my life. And so I've always done this. This is something that is not new, but I am seeing how weird it is, but it is helping create more and more people in my life. And I know that I've heard a lot that, it's hard to make friends as an adult. So I just wanted to like offer this out here to anyone who feels that way, or like meets people, or like maybe you're listening to this podcast, like, man, I really want to be friends with Joe, or I really want to be friends with Dustan. You all just ask. My favorite question to ask one is like, can we be friends?
That's
I would
awesome.
really like to be friends with you. And it's cute and it's endearing and it's real and it's vulnerable, and it has worked every single time. And the amount of relationships that I have in my life that have been based on that question, because I've been willing to be seen, of like, say the thing that you say in kindergarten, because that is really what, like, your inner child still wants that belonging and still wants that love and still wants that relationship. Just say like, can we be friends? And that's magnetic. That is magnetic.
That lands. You're reminding me of a Joe Dispenza, meant like the mind's more electric, the heart and emotions are more magnetic. And I love how you're saying that. I'd agree. It's that frequency, it's that heart, it's that energy that's, and it's just like, whoa, I want more of that. That is so cool. So well said. That was really cool. And I love that. And like, I could even feel the way that you asked it. Like, can we be friends? Like, that's what a kindergartner would do. Like, they just don't care. They're being totally real.
Yeah.
It's just that, right? I love that. And I want to, I think kind of like a wrapping up energy potentially coming up here is just to say that I love that you shared that. I often say that we're all little kids, just in older bodies. We all still have all that vulnerability, that desire to be loved and seen. It's all there. And a lot of us in the world, I believe, we like callous over our hearts to protect, or to this, to that. And I think this is the medicine. This is the antidote. And it happens through experience. And whether we're the ones inspiring or I'm being inspired, I just love this magnetic frequency. Like you said, it's gold. So thank you for being here. This is a wonderful podcast that I'm very grateful. I'm curious, is anything else either of you want to share before we wrap up today?
I just wanted to thank Jillie again, just for the just the clarity that you show up in, and just the leading by example in that too. I think your last comment about the friendship, I think it was really empowering and amazing to hear, and a really neat, I think, snapshot or a little picture of one of the ways like that doing it scared and like showing up in that vulnerability really works. Like, as you said, I've heard it so many times in my life that it's hard to gain friends, hard to find friends, hard to make friends as an adult. And that simple question of like, will you be my friend? Like, you're taking that first step. And I feel like that's the reason so many people feel it's so hard, is like, is that fear barrier? Is that disconnection barrier, that intimidation, the isolation that comes from starting to feel that way and then letting it build. But knowing that desire, honoring that desire, and taking the step to offer your friendship to someone else. And I love what you said too. It's like, it's never not ended in friendship. It's never not like, it's like, because that's what the other person wants too. Right. And I think like it's so neat and so indicative of this whole conversation, and like that just showing up in that authenticity, recognizing, seeing yourself for what's happening inside, and responding out of that, and choosing to lead with that, and just how that continues to change and shape life, and make it inherently, moment by moment, a more beautiful, a more receptive, a more loving, a safer place to be. And that's just incredible. Thank you all. Thanks so much. It's just a pleasure to be with you both today.
Oh my gosh, was it ever? And I think there's only one of the things that keeps coming up, and then I keep forgetting it. So I wrote it down so I don't forget, in terms of like doing it scared and being brave and being vulnerable and being courageous and going first and all this stuff, is first, like, do it with people that you feel safe with.
Yeah. Well said.
And I you don't have to go out and like publicly share a huge failure. Or I think, Dustin, when you had said like go cry on social media and like let yourself be seen, and like if you want to do that and that feels empowering, do that. But first, as you're building this muscle, like this is a safe place, because Dustin, you created the safe place from our initial conversation where I told you both, like, I've never felt this safe in this type of container ever, where I just know that I can show up as myself and I'll only be met with love. And so this is safe to share things, to be real, and because we have a relationship. And that's how I've done it. That's how I've built my muscle. That's why I was able to do it publicly, and why I choose to continue to do it publicly, because I also have a very safe inner circle that I will be loved and held and seen and help me with my shame and everything else. I have that, and I'm not looking for that as I share publicly, or like I'm doing it scared, or
well said.
So I never, that is such an important piece, and never do something that you don't feel comfortable with. But as you build that muscle, like, who is someone in your life that you feel safe with, that you feel loved and seen with? And if you don't have that, like, look into the coaching sphere, into therapy, into the personal development world, where there are safe containers to help show you that those people do exist, and then build from there. We all start. Everyone starts in the beginning at different stages in life. And so like there's nothing to be shamed about. And how are you self-selecting into rooms and into places and spaces that are creating that type of container for you to begin practicing this courage muscle?
I love that. Well said. Well said. Very well said. Yeah. So, I mean, I think to let that sink in, where can people find you if they want to connect with you somehow?
Yeah. So first, I would say join my email list. I'm so proud of my email list. I love it. I feel like it's like I get to write all my best friends every day and like share all of the things. So it's like would be, more of me like in this space, because it is a super safe, loving, supportive container. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok at JillieJohnston.com. So with a T, JillieJohnston.com. Instagram and TikTok is at Jillie Johnston Coaching. Website is JillieJohnston.com. I don't know if I said that right.
Right on.
And I would love to connect and hear and be one of those safe people in everyone's life.
Beautiful.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. And looking forward to a potential next time. So
yeah.
till then.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.